I see the Zoom room is starting to fill up. Welcome everybody to today's virtual speaker series presented by the Penn State Alumni Association. If you are just joining us, go ahead and tell us who you are and where you're zooming in from today. You can drop that into the chat window on the bottom of the Zoom video window. We'll be getting started in just a moment. I see Rebecca in Bethlehem and Stan in Denver and Valerie in Durham. Michelle right here in State College, Steve in Florida. Welcome into the virtual speaker series. We'll be getting started in just a minute. I see Eli and Ray in State College, Audrey from Portland, Oregon. See Elizabeth McIntosh from Nebraska, Nicole here in State College, Andrea in New York City. Welcome everybody into today's virtual speaker session featuring Lori Hepner. She is the 2003-2004 Penn State Laureate. We look forward to featuring her in just a minute. Thanks for tuning in. Good afternoon, Penn Staters. Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and I'd like to welcome everybody to today's virtual speaker session titled Drawing with Light, Making the Invisible Visible. Live closed captions are available. You can access them by clicking the closed caption button at the bottom of your Zoom video window and then clicking Show Subtitle. You may also customize your caption view by clicking the stream to text link that is posted in the chat. And we are live streaming today's presentation, which will be archived and available on our website. We are also recording. Today's guest, Lori Hepner, is the professor of integrative arts at Penn State Greater Allegheny, and she has the distinction of serving as the Penn State Laureate for 2023-2024 academic year. The Penn State Laureate is an annual honor that recognizes a full-time faculty member in the arts or humanities who works to bring greater visibility to the arts, humanities, and the university, as well as their own work. As a visual artist, Lori aims to make the invisible visible through movement, light, time, using photography, wearable and programmable LED devices, computer software, and real-time video projections. In today's discussion, Lori will share examples that show her commitment to working collaboratively and inclusively with all community members during the planning and art creation stages of projects so that diverse and vibrant voices and representations can be integrated into the artwork that is exhibited for people to discover. Thank you for joining us, Professor Lori Hepner. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, everybody. So thank you for coming to the talk today. I'm Lori Hepner. I'm at the Greater Allegheny campus right now. So luckily we have some fast internet happening on campus today. So hopefully you'll be able to see all the video clips that I'm going to be showing. But just to get started, let me pull up my PowerPoint and share my screen. And if you do have any questions at any point during this, please feel free to put them in the Q&A at the bottom of the Zoom so we can get to them at the end of the presentation. All right, so a little bit about myself. I'm a visual artist. I started in photography and kind of have transitioned through the world of digital technology into doing things with light, that allows us to do things with movement and to bring in other people into my projects to kind of make these interactive community public art pieces, which has been a newer part of things, but I'm going to share some of this with you today. And I'm going to start off from one of my earlier series of works. So right after I got tenure at Penn State, that was 2014-ish era, I was able to go on sabbatical and I spent a bunch of time in the Scandinavian countries. And so this project, this crowdsourced landscapes project, is that project that I started when I was in Finland for a series of 4 months, starting in the summertime, and then kind of working my way north up the country as well as it got later in the season. So the artwork that I was creating were these abstracted landscapes. And so being that I hadn't really traveled abroad much prior to this period of my life, I really wanted to sort of discover another culture. And so when I went to Finland, I was talking to people that live there. Luckily, because Finnish is not a very widely spoken language across the world, pretty much everybody was able to speak English. So it really made my time there easier, even though I really did want to enjoy another culture. So as I was there, one of the things that really came up is a lot of the people are really interested in nature, in the environment. And so I started kind of going on these different nature walks in cities, in sort of suburban areas, in more rural areas, and taking photographs and talking to people about how they might think their landscapes and the memories of their landscapes would be changing as climate change kind of progressed. So the crowdsourced part of this is not the pictures, it's the titles for the pictures. So that's why I have the bottom of the screen. You can sort of see this piece is called "The Parking Lot Became an Ice Rink on the First Freeze. People Were Skating." And we'll come back to this a little bit later. But to kind of give you an idea of what some of these other ones look like, I'm going to let you behind the scenes a bit. And so this is Warm Breezes Near the Second Closest Lake. These are photographs, but you're probably like, well, that's not a traditional photograph, which it isn't. And what I've been doing to sort of create these was to do these performances in the studio where I was remembering my sort of walks in nature and trying to recreate them after I had experienced them just from memory. And kind of to create this is where I don't usually show people this. Here's a not very exciting photograph of a fruit tree that I encountered walking. And part of this, if you kind of take a look, you might be able to see sort of the blues coming from the skies, the red berries on the trees are coming through. So to be able to create this, I'm going to show you a little bit of a live thing. So I'm going to switch over really quickly to another screen on my computer. All right. So I have LEDs, and what the LEDs, oh, turn it back on. Fell asleep as we were waiting to get going. But as I kind of walk, I can sort of create these images that are abstract. I'm going to check. I'm not sure if you're seeing this because I can't see it. There we go. Okay. Now I can see what I'm doing. But if you look here, right, this way, it's upside down. But if I'm walking in a straight line while kind of creating this work, what we end up doing is seeing a landscape photograph appear. So that is a little bit of landscape work from Finland. We're seeing a little piece of, but to create the more abstracted pieces, that's where I could come and change how I'm sort of moving in front of the camera to be able to make these more abstracted landscapes. So what's happening on this fun device is that it's playing back a column of pixels at a time. I'll go back over to my PowerPoint. And there we go. So to be able to create that, I can kind of change my movement. So this is what it looks like. Here's a video shot of me doing this pre-recorded, where if I walk in a straight line, you can see a landscape photograph. And if you move it and sort of think about how that changes, it really does abstract the landscape. So as I was creating these photographs, like this one, Yellow Late Arctic Night, I didn't have the real-time projection system that I'm kind of demonstrating this on with. It was me in a dark room literally running around and dancing in front of my camera for 12 or 15 seconds at a time as I played these back. And so after I maybe took 10 shots in a row with the remote control, I would then kind of go and see how I fared with that. What did I get from my performances? So some of this, like this piece in particular, this yellow light Arctic night, this is some of the photos that I was taking that kind of created those. So you can kind of see here, this was in this little town called Kemijärvi. It's right at the Arctic Circle. The town that's the Santa Claus village of Rovaniemi is about half an hour from here. You may have heard of that if you don't know much about Finland. But this is right above the Arctic Circle. So what that means is that in November, like this image that you're seeing there when I was there, the sun only rose and stayed in the sky for about 4 hours at a time. So it was a really strange but beautiful experience of kind of having this dim light and darkness for a lot of the time. But at the same time, I got there right before it had first snowed. This is like the afternoon of the first day that it snowed. There was some icing happening on these lakes. And when I was talking about that very first photograph where people were skating, that comes from this day. My second day there, it snowed. And people do this unusual thing is that on the first day when it freezes, they're able to ice skate down the street, like with actual ice skates. And so it's only something that can happen once a year, because if you know anything like Pennsylvania, we have to put down road salt, or in the case of in Finland, because this is the Arctic Circle, salt's not going to really help. They throw out pebbles so that people can have traction. So on the first day of freezing, there's no pebbles in the ice, so people can ice skate. And so I got to see a little tinge of that, but that was one of the experiences that really changed my life of figuring out, like, how is life different when you're someplace in a different culture, in this case, also a different latitude and longitude from where we are normally. But at the same time, it was really beautiful. And so that this kind of light that we see here is what in photography we call golden hour. So if you've taken a photography class, you may know about this, but pretty much any Hollywood film that you see and there's an outdoor shot, those are usually shot at golden hour, which is either right before the sun sets or right after the sun rises for about 20 minutes to an hour, depending on where you are. But in Hollywood, they want things to look most beautiful. So that's generally when landscape photography happens. Even if the plot of the movie isn't set for sunset, usually that's when a lot of the photography happens because the light is the most interesting. So being so far north, this golden glow kind of happened all the time, and the golden hour lasted a lot longer. So this was a hike that I took in a national forest that was in the Arctic Circle. This is maybe 2 weeks after I had been there, so mid-November. And there's a little bit of snow, but it was a really kind of strange and beautiful place. And this is also from some of those hikes in those places. And this was an all rock area of this park. And this boardwalk, because they do have some hiking spaces that have been taken care of. So there's some boardwalks. There are people that keep up the trails. And this actually leads to an amphitheater. So in the summertime, people go and listen to bands and concerts and symphonies in the Arctic Circle in this crazy national park that looks like this. And I thought that was really fascinating. And I'd love to get back there at some point in the summertime to see that. But experiencing all of this is what kind of made me create these crowdsourced landscaped photographs that I then was able to sort of exhibit in different places. So a few of these come from that series. And with all of these, they're presented in a way that they are printed and kind of fused onto acrylic. So they're really shiny surfaces. They're really beautiful objects. And they're nice to put on your wall. But I wanted to start doing more than just kind of creating these in the studio by myself, where I was, running around, and kind of show you some other ones. But before I click on those, I'm gonna show you a few of these. So this is a photograph that is sort of the result of the evening before where this happened. And this was the first time I got to see the aurora. And the thing that was very fascinating to me is that the sky that we can see here in my photograph, that's kind of this green and purple, is not what my eyes saw. So depending on the intensity of the aurora and the different particles that are coming into the atmosphere that create this, it can be different colors, but my eye saw this as white. It was only when I took the picture that I was able to see the greens and the purples, which was really fascinating to me. I wasn't expecting that. So this was a not super intense aurora, but it was still really awesome to be able to sort of experience that. Luckily, because I was able to go back into, oh crap, I think we might be losing power in my building. The lights keep flickering. So if I go away, the electricity died. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Not sure if the Wi-Fi keeps going. But so this is a photo I took when I went back to Finland. I'll show you where. This is where I was. This is Kilpisjärvi, Finland. It's about a few miles away from the Norwegian, Sweden, and Finland triple border point. And so this is the very top of the country. So where I was previously, that Rovaniemi and Kilpisjärvi, where I was showing the photos of some of those photos where people were skating, that part was probably a 12-hour trip if you were drive, but there aren't really great roads going that far, so we had to fly. But it was this beautiful September, and I went with the Finnish BioArt Society, which was a bunch of artists and scientists that kind of came together to work on some group projects for a week at this scientific research station. And so in September, we were really lucky to see fall. And so this landscape was really fascinating to me because this is the edge of the tree line. It's so far north that you can kind of see where the trees stop growing and you start having these alpine style landscapes take over. And so I hadn't experienced that before either. And so being able to see this really inspired me to kind of keep making artwork and to try to do these residencies where I'm able to go abroad and kind of spend a month in a different place making artwork with sometimes other artists, sometimes by myself. They vary in how those things are set up. But some of these have led to some other photographs. So the next summer, I was able to go back to Finland. And this is actually the photograph that was on my LEDs when I was sort of showing you earlier how they work. But I went to this little island called Korpo that was sort of in the Baltic Sea. So we're talking no longer the Arctic Circle, but still pretty far north. And I was able to spend 2 months there and take photographs and travel to some of these other islands. And I am a Pittsburgh native. And while I did go away for colleges, I never lived on an ocean in the way that these places were right on the water. And so it was really fascinating for me to sort of see how light worked when there was a horizon line that was water. So I was really interested in this place sort of between the sea and the skies, what these photographs, these are part of the photographs that help make the artwork, but the artwork itself are some other of these abstracted landscapes that I was creating. So these were all either sky shots or kind of the horizon line itself or right below the horizon line. And at this point, I was still like running around and there was a garage space in the basement of the artist residency building. And so I was able to have some darkness so that I could work on these during the daytime because I can't make this with light on and with traditional photography cameras. With my software, we can kind of play with that a little bit. But these were exhibited in a few places and I really sort of love the tonality of these, but there's not a lot of, details of nature. These were primarily sky shots. But some of the different things that I was doing and seeing while I was there were some of these. So these are some other photographs of that kind of between the sea and the sky. This is for these weird, crazy plants. But I really enjoyed myself being able to kind of go to these places. So to kind of fast forward a little bit to a couple other things, from this sort of the next year, I was able to be a part of a 5-person exhibition that we called 5 Islands. And this was on the island of Korpo. I was able to go back for the 3rd time for just about a week and a half at that point to help put up the show. And so these were some of my prints that as they were installed in the gallery, these are big 44 by 44 inch prints that I made on a sort of wide format photography based printer. So these are all museum quality prints and we were able to kind of exhibit them really nicely in this beautiful space that was in the sort of the civic center where they had a marina and some restaurants, and it was a really hub of the community. And it was about a 20-minute drive from the artist residency house. You could ride a bike there, it would take a lot longer. But this was kind of the place where I started also experimenting with ways to create these abstracted landscapes that looked a little bit different. So you can kind of see here, we figured out, hey, I can do this and make them on white by reversing my LED images into the negative. So kind of thinking back to my photography training, okay, I can make these the opposite and then, like a negative and be able to print them. So that's kind of technically how I did it. But because of this, I really started making work that looked a little bit different. And that was exciting for me. And because of all of that, I did end up going into some more interactive stuff. So I'm gonna flip ahead a little bit. And I collaborated with a singer and musician, Kendra Ross, on this project that we called Intersectionology. So this is 2017. We're fast forwarding a few years. And this is where I was really interested in how can we make LEDs that I can wear, we can wear, and how can I make it so that we can do this real-time light painting? And so this was the very first project that I had done that was actually like a performance in front of people on a stage setting, where it was like experimental for 20 minutes. Kendra and I were doing different light paintings. Kendra wrote all the music and recorded this, and she sang live during some of it while I was sort of making some of the light paintings. But together, it was really, this is sort of at the Kelly Strayhorn Theater, Alloy Studios, where the residency happened. And this is where I'm going to hope that my internet will play. So we were invited to perform at the Isaiah Festival, which is a new media festival that changes cities across the world every year. But so this was in Durban, South Africa. We were invited to perform. So this is kind of a rehearsal session that I did in 3D. We can give you a little bit of sense of how this worked. Me running around in this. So you go to my website and actually yourself on YouTube. It would be a 360 video that you can actually scroll around. So you sort of see the background is changing behind me because for some reason PowerPoint doesn't like working. That's very cool. But that was sort of the beginning of this wearable LEDs. And it was also the beginning of being able to sort of create stuff in real time. And right around the same time, I sort of figured out how to make these wearable LEDs. So it's a different computer system. There's a little Raspberry Pi computer running the software that runs those. And this project here was my first public art project for Healthy Ride Pittsburgh, which is a public bike sharing program. I wanted to make a light painting bike. And so I got the opportunity to kind of put those the same system that we were using in the wearable LEDs with intersectionology onto kind of making it waterproof and making it so that it could go and be checked out. So that it's run by a solar battery, and the pedal power of the bikes kind of hook into the rideshare computer for some of the power accessibility. But people could check this out and ride it around. There were other art bikes as well, but I was the only electronic art bike. Everybody else was a painter and kind of painted their bike. So it was really a fun thing to see. This is a colleague of mine, Renee Paichaki. She was the founder of the Office of Public Art for the city of Pittsburgh. She's currently doing other public art projects, but she volunteered to be my my model for this. So this is her riding the light painting bike. And interspersed, there are photographs of the sky and of waves and clouds, but there's also a little poem that I wrote. So some of that, you can see that swim the river, that if you were standing there on the sidewalk and you took a picture with your camera, you would be able to read that text and see the photos stream by. But if you don't have that, it's kind of like the riders leaving these invisible trails behind them of clouds and waves. And so this is some shots that were at the Penn State Park. And this is some of the clouds and wave trails that Renee was creating when she was kind of showing off the art bike. So it was because of that project that I was able to start doing these community-centered public art projects, which are now a really big part of my practice. And so this is from 2018. This is the Color Beachview project in Pittsburgh. It's at the Beachview Healthy Active Living Center, which is the nice way of saying the senior center. And they had done a renovation. And so they had these planters on the front of the building that we were able to I was able to create some artwork for. So this is what the planters look like. They were about 3 foot by 3 foot. And so what I did was we did an artist lecture. I went back and kind of worked with the community for 3 different sessions. And so this is some of the sessions that were captured on video, that there was a couple of other collaborations happening in terms of other nonprofits that were working. So it's like, there's a whole bunch of the Pittsburgh City Parks. I'm forgetting the other names of the 2 because that's just how my brain is working. But we were able to do these 3 art making workshops that were intergenerational art making. So we had some of the senior citizens, we had little kids, we had adults, we had teenagers, and in giving them my LEDs to create some of these silhouette portraits, we were able to then I was transforming the videos that were shot. And this is all some of the real-time videos of this, to create those different graphics for the front of the building. So they can kind of see this is some of the workshops. So it was a lot of fun. We were playing music, people were dancing and using the LEDs, and the kids really loved them. But one of the sessions was using the 6-foot LEDs like I have here. And the other session was using some of the wearable LEDs, where you saw there's a woman at the beginning of the video that was wearing the LEDs, and she said she felt like she was flying, and she really loved it. And it was somebody that you wouldn't expect would be into digital technology. So that was a temporary project. So these were these prints that were actually decals. They're on foil. And so you can put them on the front of something and kind of smooth it into whatever kind of defects there might be in the brick or the grout or whatever. And there's also a version of it that has non-slip properties. So we're able to do a sidewalk piece. So this was temporary. We didn't know how long it was going to last, but it lasted until the middle of COVID. So it was like 3.5 years. It was able to stay up. And in addition to that, I created a 9-foot by 20-foot mural that was put on the side of one of the T cars for 3 months in Pittsburgh. And so if you are familiar with the city, this is technically the subway cars. There used to be trolleys that went through the neighborhoods, and those have all gone away. But there are some neighborhoods that have above ground subway rails. And so this, from Beachview, the T track is right in front of the building where the art and the workshops happen. So this was a way to kind of transform getting the community members from Beachview and their representations to downtown Pittsburgh and back every day. So it was really exciting. They with a grant that they got from AARP, they were able to kind of buy a month. This is technically advertising. But when Port Authority found out about it, they were really excited, and they let it stay up for 2 more months. It's kind of a pro bono service, which was really awesome. So unfortunately, like this is not there now, but it was a really wonderful project. And it's led to these other public art projects that I've been doing. So this is kind of the installation fun version. I'm going to go back for a second. Clicked ahead slightly too far. This is a project that was done in 2021, 2022 at Bakery Square in Pittsburgh. So this is a shopping area. It's where Google's offices are. There's restaurants. This building had just been renovated and holds a bunch of different restaurants. And so Walnut Capital, who owns the space, put a call out for artists to kind of create artwork for the front of their building. And so I was one of the 2 inaugural artists chosen to create artwork. And the point of this was to create artwork with some of the local elementary schools. So I went into Lincoln Elementary School and Urban Academy with one was Pittsburgh Public, one was a private school, a charter school. So I was working with 4th and 5th graders, and they were the ones that kind of created these silhouette portraits that I then used to create these outdoor 2 figures of these dancing women that are about 16 foot tall. And they're prints on metal, which is really cool. And then adjacent to it, there's this video projection that was happening at night in one of, so if you go there now, this is now Jenny's ice cream store. So it was not used. So we were able to put a projector inside and kind of rear project onto the glass. And so the video portion of this that I created used some of the figures you saw on the outdoor murals, but it also made sure that every kid that participated got in the video. So it's a 42-minute loop. It's a non-narrative piece. There's no sound, but people can kind of experience these light paintings of the kids that were kind of creating this. So what this looked like, this is some of the just screen grabs of the stills that I was taking and kind of using that to create some of the figures that are out and showing. And the kids were so excited. They were invited to the opening reception for this. And this girl, she was so excited because she saw herself in the mural and she was ecstatic. And that's kind of what that type of interaction with communities is something that I really cherish, especially sort of working with students in Pittsburgh public schools. I myself went through Pittsburgh public schools and sort of became the artist that I am because I strangely had a kindergarten computer class in 1986. So we're talking Photoshop doesn't exist. We're typing things in to make equations, to make drawings. And if I hadn't had that experience, I don't think I'd be doing what I did today. So for me to be able to go and kind of have this experience with, young students that maybe will inspire them to do something with technology or to become artists or to just like art when they're older is something that I really love being able to do. So the community engagement, this is what some other part of the video looks like. So you can kind of see here, I used the videos that were just using those bright colors as the students made them and kind of through my magic of Premiere and layers was able to kind of create these other colors. So you can kind of see these layers of the students and their silhouettes. They were also given a small little flashlight head to draw with. So you can kind of see some of their drawing into the air to create, sometimes they're writing their names or drawing a star or a heart. And so there'd be other kids that were kind of creating the silhouette portraits of them at the same time. So that experience worked out really well. And it's what kind of also led to this project that happened shortly afterwards. This is called Air Above Us. This was at the, technically called the Carey Furnaces. And this is in between, technically Braddock is across, Braddock's like next door to this, but it's the site itself, I think is Rankin and Swissvale. But this is in the Mon Valley. This is sort of the ex-steel corridor. And this blast furnace had been abandoned for a long time. And so there's the Rivers of Steel is the organization that kind of took over the site and runs it as a nonprofit. And they do this Alloy Pittsburgh project every few years. And for this case, there were 6 artists and we were each paired with a different community location. So I was working with the Braddock Carnegie Library and also did some light painting workshops in Homestead. And what we were doing was sort of thinking about, I was asking people like, how does the air above us connect us? And this is, COVID was still happening. So it's, a lot of metaphorical things could be said that are good or bad. We dream into the sky, we make wishes to the sky, but there's also these particles that might be floating around and making us sick. So the air above us is kind of this poetic gesture. And the Carey Furnace site itself, for a long time, it was abandoned. And I know people that broke into it way back in the day to make artwork. There is a 3-story tall deer head in Carey Furnace that was constructed just from materials on site by some artists. And because of the fact that that existed when Rivers of Steel got this turned into a National Historic location, that the deer head sculpture and all the graffiti is actually like a historic site and they can't change it, which is pretty fascinating. But I got really interested in the graffiti. So the way that this project works is that I was creating these light paintings of silhouettes of people with Braddock Carnegie Library in the community. And from there, created some of these kind of, you can see the air above us, that's all graffiti from the site. So below is kind of the overhead view of where the different pieces are. I'm gonna play this. And I think I have this audio off, yeah. So this is some of the things that happen. So there's an app that you downloaded, it's free. And when you point it at the different locations, it ends up triggering the augmented reality of the videos we created. So the people are actually put into the sky. And the silhouettes just become sort of the negative space of whatever the landscape looks like around it. So this is sort of in the tower of one of the, sort of see the graffiti, the eye below it is the trigger for this. So it's an image recognition system. And so this is something I'm continuing working on and doing a project for the city of Pittsburgh for the Davis Avenue Bridge reconstruction in Brighton Heights, where I live. I'm really excited because it's down the street from my house. And so the bridge is going to reconnect the neighborhood to Riverview Park, which was, it was demolished, the original like 1890 bridge in 2009. And so that project is going to be some stainless steel sculptures, but similar kind of community created augmented reality animations that are going to play in the sky, kind of like this. So this was the sort of the inspiration for the project that I'm currently working on. But being able to kind of do this as the proof of concept, I was able to show this to the city of Pittsburgh saying, hey, this is what I did before. And it luckily allowed me to be chosen as the artist to kind of create some of the new work. So this is some, you can see some of the people using the augmented reality system. And sort of able to see these animations come to life on the screen. And that led into this project, which is Mercy Movements Drawing with Light. And this is a project that I was chosen to be one of the artists to create work for the new UPMC Mercy Pavilion building. And so this was a new hospital building that was being built next to Mercy Hospital, which is in the Uptown neighborhood. It's sort of at the bluff. If you're across the river on the south side, you can sort of see it at the top of the hill. It's right next to Duquesne University. And what I was able to do was hold these collaborative light painting workshops at the hospital prior to the new hospital building opening, so that patients and providers and family members and staff members and doctors could come and use the wearable LEDs. And I have a different version of them that I have an upgraded version that has larger, more accessible buttons, so that somebody that might have some movement differences would be able to use it a little bit easier. And so the artists, we were all sort of trained by having a bunch of really interesting Zoom webinars with doctors and different healthcare providers. Just let us know what the patient population was going to be like, because we wanted to make artwork for the patients that were going to be using the building, which this is what houses the Rehabilitation Institute and the UPMC Vision Institute. So there's a big population of people that are wheelchair users or have other movement differences. There may be people recovering from strokes or glaucoma or sort of having other vision things. So we were, shown like, what happens with somebody that's colorblind? How do they experience your artwork? How can you make artwork so that the people that are going to be in the building can actually experience it well? So the two pieces, there are these two prints that are on the wall on the first floor next to the Uptown Cafe. And then there's also a video piece from those footage that we did in the workshops. And so it's a combination of some of the wearable LEDs and some of the portraits that we were creating of people. And when I say we, it's usually me, but sometimes we have more than one person that's a participant. They use the LEDs to create the portraits and the silhouette portraits of each other. So it's a combination of a collaboration with me and with them sort of creating some of this. I was also able to hold a workshop for the inaugural Pittsburgh Disability Pride event in downtown Pittsburgh this summer. It was like a summer 2022. I'm a neurodivergent person, so I kind of fit in, and we found an accessible space, and the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust was very nice to let me use it for $1 for the week that I needed to do it. But we kind of were able to hold it so that people could come from that event and make some of the light paintings. And so it was a really fun time. And this is the video piece that's at UPMC. Luckily, there's now a video monitor in the space, so it's playing live, but there's also a QR code on the wall so that people that are maybe they are going to be going elsewhere in the building for their doctor's appointment and might have to sit in another waiting room, which luckily there's art in all those waiting rooms, but they could take the video with them on their personal device because of the QR code being there. And so that was something that was really important for me to kind of thinking about how this could be used, but also how's it supposed to be experienced. So it is a very slow moving piece. There's not a lot of the motion is slow. There's no audio because we would not want to hurt the people that work there by having to listen to the same audio on repeat for the rest of their job life. So these were all things that the artists were, we were learning and sort of thinking about, well, really, how can your artwork be experienced, in this case, a healthcare setting, so that it adds to the experience and it doesn't take away from the experience for both patients, but then also the people that are going to be there every day. So this was a really great experience. And right from these movement drawings, as I kind of call them, I was also asked to, did some submissions. There was another, so the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign had a call out for artists for a building that they had just renovated where their kinesiology department is located, Freer Hall. And so I was luckily the artist that was chosen. And so I did these different movement drawings of athletes of all abilities as kind of the theme. So these two pieces, this is one of them. And this is another one that were created right after the UPMC project last year. And so these are both were installed over the summer. So this is one of the installation shots or installation shots. So it's a big 70-inch by 70-inch print. So it's bigger than I am tall, which is really awesome. It kind of really fits the space. And the people there really enjoyed it so much is that they contacted me in October and they're like, hey, will you make more art for us? We have another space in the building that we want to do. So I can show you, I was approved 2 days ago. They said yes. So some of the artwork that is going to get printed, really pretty large scale, about 75 inches tall. And this, they wanted to have, they told me we wanted to feature strength training. So I'm like, okay, we can make strength training movement drawings. I can make that happen. And so these are the pieces that are going to be in the new space. Hopefully in the next 2 months is the hopeful goal of this. You can kind of see here what that space is going to look like. So they wanted really colorful things. That was sort of one of the asks in their RFP. So this is made to fit this space. And I can show it to you since they said yes. If they hadn't said yes 2 days ago, I would not be able to show it to you right now. So I'm happy to be able to share that. And the last thing I'm going to share with you is a related project that was temporarily up at the Pittsburgh International Airport during COVID. So this is not a ton of people got to see it, but I did a performance piece at the airport at baggage claim, which is the prior photo, the fall before COVID. I was slated to have an exhibition in June of 2020. That got postponed, but because it got postponed, I got to create some new work. So this is a piece, Blue Corona Sunset Dances, that is a whole bunch of these light painting things that I made in the studio the very first day I was able to get back into the studio after the COVID lockdown. So it was a really meaningful piece for me. I used a photograph. I was actually leaving the country on February 29th, 2020 to do an art project abroad, which ended up getting canceled a week later, but I took a photograph out of the plane window of the sunset. And so all of these use that photograph of a sunset that plays back on the LEDs where I created these. And so this is actually an installation shot. The piece was up for a year at the San Diego International Airport. It just came down last week, unfortunately, but I did get to go out there. And so this is a slight change in the number of the pieces to fit the space, but this was right next to the brewery that's sort of at the major hub of, so you've been to the San Diego Airport, you might know where this is, but it was a challenging site because the wall curved and changed size as it was also on a ramp. So we had to figure out how can we make this work so that it looks the best that it can. So I'm also happy to announce, I can't show you the work yet, but I was just gotten a commission for the new terminal in the Pittsburgh airport. So some of my artwork is going to be permanently in that new terminal when it opens in 2025. Kind of similarly thinking about abstracted landscapes and skyscapes, which are what I've been working on now. But I think I'm going to stop my presentation and let you all ask questions. And get my Zoom back to me.
All right, Lori, thank you so much for that presentation. We do have a couple of questions that have come in previously. And I think you touched on this, but maybe I'll switch it up a little bit. Kind of, they want you to explain your artistic process of creation, right? Which I think
I tried to touch on
pretty extensively.
Yeah.
Where do you find kind of your greatest inspiration? You talked about the projects that you did with children, with differently abled athletes, with landscapes. Kind of where do you get your most inspiration?
Well, I think for me, it's a little bit about sort of how I experience the world. So the landscapes are something that I really enjoy doing because it's not something that I did growing up. We didn't go hiking as a family or anything like that. So as an adult, I was able to do some artist residencies where I got to do that. So I was able to do a 7-day hike for the very first time in Iceland, which was breathtaking, but also one of the hardest things I've ever done. And because of that, I was really interested in these kind of northern landscapes. I also was able to do a Yukon River canoe trip for 3 weeks with a bunch of artists. So 3 weeks, there were 12 of us and a bunch of canoes and bare barrels of food. And we paddled down, I think it was about 600 kilometers of the river over those 3 weeks. And that was one of the most spectacular landscape experiences I've ever had. And the nature was so pristine. I wish all of our nature was as pristine as that was. But sort of being able to like be in the world and experience those things is something that led to a lot of inspiration for me. The other things is, you know, I like technology, so it's fun for me to kind of figure out, well, how can I do more things? I did not show the body of work that kind of got me started using LEDs, but that was a series of what I call Twitter portraits, where these using computer code to kind of blink out people's tweets and binary code and lights that were these abstracted circles. And so that was the very, very first LED project I had done in like 2012-ish. No, I think it ended in 2012. I think it was more like 2009. It was early Twitter before there were pictures embedded in Twitter. But thinking about digital technology and how it affects people. So thinking about these as like people's digital portraits of themselves, of like every time you make a social media post, is that like a new way of having this digital identity? And so I was doing a lot more with digital technology as inspirations kind of earlier in my career. And that kind of led me into the LEDs, which has led me into kind of these whole these other different ways of making art. And these days I really do like making art with people. So finding a way that I can work with people, but yet still have the time. Like I like doing Photoshop. I like doing that process. It's, some people really like to paint. I really like to get into Photoshop and do all of what I do to create these final pieces. So that's kind of where the inspiration comes from, I think.
Another question was around kind of your favorite or most inspirational place during your time in the Arctic.
I did get to go to Svalbard once during 24-hour sunlight and once during 24-hour darkness. But I think my favorite, like it was a really interesting experience. I don't know that I'll ever return to those places. But I spent 2 months on this little island called Trana in Norway that's at the bottom of the Arctic Circle. And they have one of, I guess, Norway's big music festivals there in the summertime. I'm not big, I don't really know about Norwegian musicians, so I was not aware of the festival, but the town normally has like 300 people in it. And it's in this archipelago that's 22 miles off the coast. You have to take 2 ferries to get there. But it's gorgeous, but they have high-speed internet and like it's a normal working functional place where people have jobs. And it's really a place that I really love. So I got to spend 2 months there in 2018, kind of working on a makerspace for their community. And then went back the next summer on a Fulbright to be able to kind of continue that project on. And so I had set to go back on my sabbatical. I'd written a grant to go back, but my sabbatical was 2021 and COVID kind of made that not happen. But I really just love that place. And so if you ever go to Norway, I would highly recommend that little town, Trana. But it's kind of, the way you get to it is via ferries from the town that's Bodø. And it's through to the top of the train line. So if you want to take one of the Norwegian trains that, I know there's like Netflix of these Norwegian trains, going through the countryside. If you want to experience that, you can go over that train and then take a couple ferries to get to this little community in the Arctic, which I would love to go back. It was really beautiful.
It's amazing. Can you talk about the influence of AI? I know that there are a lot of AI applications out there now to produce art. How is that kind of influencing the art that you're using? Are you using AI? What are your kind of general thoughts on that in the art space?
Yeah, so I guess I've done a bunch of I dived into how AI is fitting into everything over the past year. And so one of the things I really learned is that depending on which general AI you're using, some of those have been trained on the open internet, which means copyright violations, integrity of who owns that. And as an artist, I don't want an AI training on my art that's going to make stuff that looks like what I do and then make my professional opportunities go away. So I have purposely stayed away from using the AIs that are, the different platforms that train on everything that's out there. Not to be too pro Adobe, but I teach Adobe and I use it every day. So I'm pretty much an Adobe guru, even if they don't pay me money. But their new Firefly, they say they've trained it all on their own Adobe stock images so that it actually doesn't have that academic integrity and copyright issue. And so for me, that's where I started exploring things a little bit and playing around with it. I haven't kind of used it in my own artwork yet, but one of the things that has been really changing for me is just how the programs have changed. In Photoshop, there's all of these crazy automatic background remover. That's an AI tool. And that didn't exist a year ago. And so I'm going to have to figure out how to teach that to students next year.
Right.
So that'll be an interesting situation. But I think it's really evolving, and I'm excited a little bit, but also a little worried about how it's going to work for artists, and hoping that it doesn't take away the ability that, companies that need artists to make advertisements for them or whatever. I'm hoping that does not go the way of AI and that there's still people involved, but we'll see. It's changing really fast. So who knows, in 2 weeks, there might be something totally new out.
Yeah, for people who aren't familiar with the Penn State Laureate, can you tell us a little bit about that and how you intend to use that platform?
Yeah, so it's a position that has existed, I think, from maybe a little bit of more than 10 or 12 years. It wasn't something that was at Penn State. I started in 2007, and that there was no laureate at that point in time. But it's one person from the universities, and it kind of rotates amongst artists, musicians, poets, historians. There's been a large array of different types of kind of research, creative activity that people are creating. Last year, there was Velvet Brown was the tuba player based out of University Park. And so she traveled around and like took students and did concerts. I'm kind of bringing my art making and the LED workshops to the different campuses and to University Park. So it's been really, I think I visited 10 different campuses last semester. And I know the first week of February, I'm doing 4 campuses or 5 campuses in 4 days. One of the days like doubling up.
Sure.
So it's kind of, it's a lot, but it's really interesting. And so like I hadn't visited a lot of the different campuses. And so it's really given me an opportunity to experience what the entire Commonwealth is like for Penn State. So that's really exciting. Because I've been to, New Kensington and Fayette and Beaver, because they're right around Pittsburgh and obviously State College. But I've never been to Abington. I've never been able to go to that side of the state. So it's really fun that way. It's also allowing me both to kind of just spread my art making and sort of let other people use some of my tools to make art. And then we did some light painting with the poetry class at New Kensington. I'm going to do robot light painting with a math and art class at Lehigh Valley in a couple weeks. And so Lehigh Valley's given me a solo exhibition, and Altoona is as well. So I just finished packing and printing art and framing art and shipping art to Lehigh Valley that got there yesterday for the show that's going to open, I think, in 2 weeks. So that's really exciting because I really love making artwork. And as a professor at Penn State, that's not generally the only part of my job. When it's normally I'm teaching. And so the laureate year, your load is reduced. So I was able to not teach this year, which is sad for my students, but it has allowed me to really focus on my practice as an artist this year, which has been really wonderful. But I think it's a program that's great. And I do encourage all of you, if there's a laureate coming anywhere near where you are, if you're in Pennsylvania, like if it's me, awesome. If it's another laureate in another year, go and support them, because it's a really interesting way for artists and musicians to really get out there and be a part of the university in a way that they aren't normally.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that our audience appreciates that. Your fashion is getting some comments in the chat here. The art,
like printing on fabric in undergraduate before we had like printers that could print on fabric. So that like I do have an interest in that. So it might be something that I dive into. See, this is my Finnish. This comes from my Finland area.
Okay.
Finnish designer that I really like.
Well, coming to a red carpet near you, some artwork from Penn State.
Well, if somebody wants to have me design a dress for them, I'm happy to have them call me.
That's awesome. If we are running out of time here, if people are interested in learning more about the work that you're doing, where can they go to learn more?
Yeah, I do have a website. It's just lauriehepner.com. It's a little bit older. I'm sort of updating some things, so it's probably going to change over to a different website in the next month or so. But that's an easy way to get to me. You can always send me an email. I know my Penn State, it's just lauriehepner@psu.edu. You can send me an email, and I'm happy to hopefully respond to you quickly. It may not, depending on where I'm traveling as laureate, it might take a couple of days, but I'm happy to talk to people more if they are interested.
Absolutely. And we just dropped all of that information in the comments, so you can see Lori's Facebook and Twitter and her email address and her website.
Yeah,
all
follow me on
listed there.
Instagram, Facebook, all that wonderful fun stuff.
Great. Lori, thank you so much for the presentation today. And I want to thank everybody who has Zoomed in with us today for joining us on the virtual speaker session. If you're a member of the Penn State Alumni Association, thank you for your support. If you're not yet a member, what are you waiting for? Go to our website at alumni.psu.edu, and you too can become a member of the world's largest alumni association. Thank you for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. Take care. Bye.